The Old Joliet Prison is a Gothic revival fortress on Collins Street in Joliet. It's a monument to 144 years of human suffering. Its golden limestone walls were quarried and laid by the hands of the first inmates, and they've absorbed a legacy of violence, despair, and death. Since its construction began in 1858, the facility has stood as a stark symbol of crime and punishment in Illinois. Its towers cast a long shadow over the surrounding landscape and the public imagination. You may remember Old Joliet Prison from the movie The Blues Brothers. But all of the suffering that's been contained in the Old Joliet Prison has led to a significant amount of stories of haunting. Its historical trauma and the dark celebrity of its most infamous residents have given this place a deep and disturbing history. It's a powerful mosaic of ghost stories. These are the ghosts of the Old Joliet Prison. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it, and hit the hype button, please. Thank you. The paranormal legends of the Old Joliet Prison are rooted in the physical and psychological environment created as construction began. The prison's very architecture was designed to intimidate. Its construction was an act of subjugation, and its operational history was a relentless chronicle of human misery. The prison was a perfect environment for generating paranormal phenomenon from its beginning. In the mid-19th century, a prison was intended to be an iconic structure meant to convey the unwavering strength of the law. The Old Joliet Prison was designed by prolific Chicago architect William W. Boyington. It is a prime example of prison architecture. Boyington also designed Chicago's iconic water tower, and he envisioned the prison as a medieval castle. He deliberately chose the Gothic revival style because it was meant to evoke a sense of ancient, inescapable authority. The complex is characterized by its imposing stonework, high perimeter walls, and corner towers that mimic fortress battlements. The structure itself has a sense of immense weight and permanence. The main entrance on Collins Street is a grand Gothic revival entrance, designed to make anyone who passes through it to feel small and powerless. It's made with warm golden limestone, quarried directly on site, giving the entire 25-acre complex a monolithic and uniform quality, reinforcing the sense of being trapped within a self-contained, oppressive world. The Gothic revival style gives feelings of medieval horror, of dungeons, predisposing both the inmates who live there and the people who now visit its decaying halls feelings of dread and oppression. The architecturally induced atmosphere of fear creates a ground for paranormal perception. In this environment, which was designed from the ground up to be unsettling, every strange noise, every fleeting shadow, or every sudden cold spot is amplified. Its potential for supernatural explanation is magnified by the very limestone that surrounds it. The building is an antagonist. The foundational trauma of the Old Joliet Prison began on May 22nd, 1858, when the first 53 prisoners arrived to build. These men were brought from the decrepit Alton Penitentiary to begin the grueling work of constructing the larger prison around themselves. This included the physically demanding labor of quarrying massive blocks of limestone from the vein that ran just a few hundred feet from the prison walls. This forced labor represents a profound form of psychological torture. The convicts were compelled to create the very instrument of their own confinement, to literally build their own prison. The study of paranormal phenomenon often theorizes that intense emotional and physical energy, especially those associated with trauma, pain, and despair, can leave a lasting imprint on a location. The construction of the Old Joliet Prison can be viewed as a fundamental imprinting event. The stones of the prison are saturated with the sweat of the builders and the hopelessness of and resentment of men forced to erect a monument to their own loss of freedom. The prison's haunting began with its own creation, a foundational layer of negative energy born from the despair of its builders, which created a baseline of residual psychic distress that permeates the entire structure to this day. When it first opened, the Chicago Tribune glowingly declared the prison a state work which will be for long years to come the pride of her citizens. The optimism was short-lived. The image of the Joliet Prison quickly changed as it descended into a pit of human misery that would define its 144-year history. Just 20 years after its opening, the prison was filled well over capacity with nearly 2,000 inmates. Reports of unsanitary and dangerous conditions emerged almost immediately, becoming a persistent feature of the prison's legacy. These conditions were examples of the brutal realities of the 19th and early 20th century prisons. Victorian-era prisons were intentionally designed to be as unpleasant as possible to deter reoffending, resulting in facilities that were small, damp and riddled with disease. At Joliet, the philosophy manifested in horrifying ways. As late as 1920, the cell still had no running water or toilets, with buckets serving the inmates' needs. The original hospital for the sick was located in a damp, unventilated cellar, a place more likely to cultivate illness than to cure it. And these conditions led to widespread disease and countless unrecorded deaths, contributing to the general atmosphere of suffering that saturates the site. This pervasive misery was punctuated by explosions of extreme violence and events that have become part of the prison's ghost story. There was a riot in 1931 over growing unrest over a restrictive 1927 parole law. It reached a boiling point in March 1931. Tensions had been high since the Washington Birthday Massacre a month prior, when guards killed 3 inmates during an escape attempt in what prisoners viewed as a brutal and avoidable act. The riot began during mealtime, escalating to violence against the guards. In the ensuing chaos, guards quelled the outburst with gunfire and gas bombs, killing one 23-year-old inmate and wounding 3 others. The event was a flashpoint of collective rage born from a sense of injustice and desperation. Then there was a riot in 1975. On April 22nd, 1975, members of the powerful Chicago street gang, the Almighty Black Pea Stone Nation, took over a cell block and held several correction officers hostage. Their grievance was the administration's plan to transfer key gang members to other prisons to break up their power base within Joliet. During the tense standoff, a reformed former gang leader, Herbert Cadillac Catlett, was sent in by the warden to negotiate with the rioters. He was murdered by the gang members he was trying to reason with. These riots, along with countless individual murders, self-unalivings, and executions by hanging and later the electric chair, created distinct layers of traumatic energy within the prison. The cycle of violence acted as a powerful engine for the creation of paranormal legends. Each major event, from the murder of the first corrections officer, Joseph Clark, in 1864, to the gang-related killing of Catlett in 1975, provided a new, potent story of sudden and violent death, which is a classic catalyst for a haunting. The prison is haunted by the accumulated, layered tragedies of its long and bloodied history. The general atmosphere of misery within the Joliet prison gave rise to a specific cast of ghosts. These are distinct legends, each with their own narrative, historical anchors, and folkloric significance. There's a nationally famous singing ghost and the tragic figure of a murdered warden's wife. There's the dark specter of a serial killer who became a celebrity. These ghosts reveal how different forms of tragedy can create unique and enduring paranormal legacies. The most well-known and well-documented paranormal event in the prison's history is the legend of the singing ghost. This is a massive public phenomenon that cemented the prison's haunted reputation. It all began on the hot night of July 14th, 1932, when residents of the adjacent Fairmount Hill neighborhood began to hear a strange sound wafting from the direction of the old convict cemetery, a burial ground for the unclaimed inmates located on a wooded bluff overlooking the prison. The sound was described as a dreamy, ethereal voice crooning hymns, with some witnesses claiming the songs were in Latin. The singing continued night after night, typically between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, and the story quickly spread beyond the neighborhood. It became a media sensation, drawing crowds of thousands from Joliet, Chicago, and eventually across the nation. The nightly gatherings took on a carnival-like atmosphere, with families bringing picnic blankets to listen for the ghost. However, the massive crowds also brought chaos. Outsiders tramped through private yards, broke the few crumbling headstones in the cemetery, and attracted swindlers who set up an illegal parking racket, charging ghost hunters 15 cents to park and another 15 to leave without a broken windshield. The public disruption became a major issue for prison officials and local law enforcement. An official explanation was soon provided to quell the hysteria. An inmate named William Leyland Chrysler, while checking the sump pumps at the nearby quarry, had been singing to himself to combat his fear during his lonely nightly treks. The sound of his voice, they claimed, carried through the undeveloped area and created the ghostly echo. However, this tidy explanation was immediately met with skepticism and contains notable inconsistencies. Prisoners, even the most trusted ones, were not allowed to move about the grounds unguarded, especially at night. Further, the area had been searched nightly by scores of amateur ghost hunters, many of them armed, yet no trace of Chrysler or guard was ever found. The legend of the singing ghost continues on because of this ambiguity. It's a powerful piece of folklore because of its paranormal claim and for the massive social reaction it provoked, as well as the lingering distrust of the authorities' convenient explanation. The story represents a moment when the prisoner's dark, sorrowful aura physically spilled over its walls and audibly manifested to the surrounding community, creating a shared experience that could not be easily dismissed. Its power lies in the tension between what thousands of people heard and what one official report claimed, making it the prison's most famous and perpetually debated ghost story. While the singing ghost represents the collective sorrow of the prison's dead, the story of Odette Allen introduces a different and more personal paranormal story. Her violent death provided a pocket of domestic horror embedded within the larger framework of institutional violence. Odette was the wife of Warden Edmund M. Allen, a nationally recognized figure in corrections. On the night of Saturday, June 19, 1915, when the warden was in Chicago on business, Odette was brutally murdered in her bedroom on the second floor of the administration building, which served as the warden's living quarters. The crime scene was horrific. Investigators found that her skull had been crushed by a blunt instrument, and it was suspected that she had been SA'd. To cover the crime, the perpetrator started a fire using a jug of wood alcohol stored in a closet, which badly charred her body. Suspicion immediately fell on a convict houseboy named Chicken Joe Campbell, whom Odette had personally selected for duty in her home. Despite maintaining his innocence, Campbell was convicted on largely circumstantial evidence and sentenced to death on the gallows. However, realizing that there was a potential rush to judgment, Governor E.F. Dune commuted the sentence to life in prison. Campbell died in Joliet in 1950, and the murder of Odette Allen is officially considered unsolved. This unresolved and brutal crime has given rise to the legend of her haunting. Her spirit is specifically associated with the administrative building, the site of her murder. Paranormal lore speaks of hearing the tread of Odette Allen on the second floor, a restless spirit tied to the location of her violent end. Her story provides a stark contrast to the angry anonymous male spirit said to haunt the cell blocks. Her presence is a lingering echo, specific intimate tragedy, a story of betrayal and injustice that stands apart from the prison's broader narrative of suffering. The Old Joliet Prison's haunted reputation is significantly amplified by the infamous criminals who were once incarcerated there. The prison housed Depression-era gangster Lester Joseph Gillis, better known as Babyface Nelson, who escaped during a prison transfer, Richard Speck, who is a murderer of 8 student nurses, and Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. The presence of these high-profile criminals infuses the prison's history with a strain of dark celebrity, making it a magnet for public fascination. No figure looms larger in the prison's paranormal lore than serial killer John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Gacy is heavily associated with the prison in public accounts of its hauntings. The connection has been cemented in modern paranormal culture by television shows like Ghost Adventures, which dedicated an episode of its serial killer spirit series to investigating the Old Joliet Prison specifically in search of Gacy's spirit. While Gacy was indeed processed through the reception and classification center at Joliet, his significant time on death row and his eventual execution by lethal injection on May 10, 1994 took place at the nearby, more modern Stateville Correction Center. The haunting of John Wayne Gacy at the Old Joliet Prison is an example of paranormal branding by association. The public's intense horror and fascination with Gacy, who creates a narrative so potent that it overshadows historical fact. Investigators and thrill seekers often arrive at the Old Joliet Prison expecting to encounter the spirit of Gacy. The expectation is fueled by media portrayals and popular lore, and this colors the interpretation of any unexplained event. A disembodied voice or a shadowy figure is more readily attributed to the infamous killer clown than to an anonymous inmate who died of tuberculosis in 1890. The prison's paranormal reputation has been branded with Gacy's dark energy, which makes sense. His spirit is attached to the Old Joliet Prison in the public imagination because the Gothic decaying prison is a more visually powerful home for his evil than the more modern Statesville. Gacy's name adds a marketable, terrifying face to the prison's generalized haunting, demonstrating how a location's paranormal identity can be shaped as much by cultural power and narrative convenience as by historical events. The paranormal activity at Old Joliet Prison is not uniformly distributed. Like any haunted location, it has its epicenter, specific areas where phenomena are reported with greater frequency and intensity. These hotspots are often the places where the most extreme forms of human suffering were concentrated. The prison's hospital was a place of profound vulnerability, disease, and death. In the early years, it was little more than a damp, unventilated cellar, a breeding ground for illnesses. Even in later years, it was a site of grim medical procedures, and in the late 1960s, controversial hepatitis experiments where inmates were intentionally exposed to the virus. And that's wild. Now, decaying remnants of its past, such as a rusted x-ray machine and large operating lights, are still visible and are silent testaments to the suffering that occurred there. The history of medical trauma has made the hospital what many tour guides and investigators consider the most paranormally active building on the grounds. The most consistent story is the sighting of a tall man, a shadowy figure often seen walking the desolate halls. Multiple guides have reported encounters with this entity, with one story claiming the figure chased a guide out of the building as doors slammed shut around him. During a paranormal tour conducted by the Chicago Hauntings Group, a spirit box session in the hospital allegedly captured the chaotic sounds of prisoners rioting. The North Segregation building was a place of mental and spiritual annihilation. Described as an almost windowless building for solitary confinement, this is where inmates were sent for punishment, subject to extreme isolation designed to break their will. It also served as death row, the final stop for the condemned before they met their fate through hanging or the electric chair. The psychological torment inflicted within these cells was immense. And obviously, the paranormal activity reported in North Segregation is characterized by its aggressive and psychologically disturbing nature. It's the raw, furious energy of minds pushed to the absolute breaking point. Visitors and investigators frequently report sudden and intense feelings of negativity and oppression upon entering the building. During a paranormal tour, a guide attempting to communicate with the spirits here was reportedly met with a hostile, disembodied voice that angrily told her to bleep off. The building is tied to gruesome lore, including a story that one prisoner was dismembered within its walls, his body parts scattered across across the upper level. The strong sense of a lingering, angry presence makes this one of the most feared locations within the prison complex. The phenomena here directly mirror the function of the space. The reported aggression and negativity are the spectral echoes of the intense mental anguish and terror that define life and death in solitary confinement. The east and west cell blocks were the epicenter of daily life and mass suffering for the general population of the prison. For over a century, thousands of men were crammed into tiny, unsanitary cells, often measuring just 6 by 10 feet for 2 people, stacked in tiers of 4 or 5 stories high. These cavernous, echoing halls housed the collective misery of the common prisoner. The phenomena reported here reflect the sense of mass suffering. The cell blocks are known for a cacophony of anonymous, sorrowful sounds. Disembodied cries, mourning wails, and ghostly whistling are commonly heard echoing through the empty tiers. Shadowy figures are frequently spotted moving along the catwalks or standing in the doorways of empty cells. Apparitions with no specific name or story, representing the countless inmates who lived and died here. One of the earliest and most specific accounts of a haunting at Joliet comes from an 1874 issue of the Spiritualist newspaper, which detailed the haunting of a particular cell once occupied by an executed prisoner named Chase. Subsequent inmates placed in the cell reported terrifying phenomena. Chase's ghost would appear, sometimes headless or with his skull opened, a gruesome reference to the medical experiments performed on his body post-mortem. His favorite trick was to climb into the bunk and physically push the living prisoner out of it. And you thought you had trouble sleeping. Inmates also reported the feeling of cold, clammy hands touching them while they were paralyzed with fear. This early story is a rare example of an attempt to attach a specific entity to the generalized suffering of the cell box, giving a name and a face to the otherwise anonymous despair that permeates these spaces. The main prison yard was the primary outdoor space for inmates, a place of tense social interaction, exercise, occasional recreation, and riots, all under the constant, menacing watch of guards in the towers. You might expect paranormal activity to be concentrated inside the buildings, but the yard has its own unique and unsettling phenomena. The most frequently reported paranormal occurrence in the main yard is the malfunction of electronic equipment. Visitors, tour guides, and paranormal investigators alike have reported their cameras and other electronic devices will suddenly fail, and fully charged batteries will drain in an instant for no discernible reason. Photos taken in the yard are also said to contain unexplained shadowy anomalies and strange mists. Ooh, strange mists. This activity affecting technology in a wide open space suggests something different from a localized haunting. It points towards the presence of a massive ambient energy field. This could be interpreted as the collective psychic energy of the entire prison complex, the accumulated pain, anger, and fear of 144 years, bleeding out from the surrounding buildings and concentrating in the open yard, a 21st century manifestation of the 19th century misery that created it. Now, the Old Joliet Prison has undergone a transformation. It's no longer an active prison. It has become a landmark for dark tourism and a premier destination for paranormal enthusiasts. Following its closure in 2002 due to budget cuts and its obsolete and dangerous nature, the Old Joliet Prison was left abandoned. For 15 years, it sat empty, succumbing to natural decay and rampant vandalism, including multiple arson fires that severely damaged several buildings. I used to drive by this prison frequently on my way to work when I was a young attorney. In December 2017, the city of Joliet took control of the property, partnering with the Joliet Area Historical Museum to bring the monumental task of stabilizing and preserving the historic site. The effort culminated in the prison opening for public tours in 2018, allowing people to legally walk the haunted grounds for the first time. The Joliet Area Historical Museum now offers a variety of tours designed to cater to different interests. These include self-guided tours, general history tours, and specialized prison after dark tours. The museum is careful in its branding. The After Dark tour focuses on the scary stories of the prison's history, but comes with an explicit disclaimer that it does not involve ghost hunting or paranormal activity. For those wanting to conduct a private paranormal investigation, you can do that. For $1,250 for a group of up to 10 people, investigative teams can gain exclusive after-hours access to 6 of the prison's most active buildings from 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. This allows the institution to maintain a respectable historical focus through its official tours, while simultaneously capitalizing on the immense public interest in the prison's haunted reputation through these private paranormal rentals. And I think that sounds like a fun time. Being locked in the paranormal prison from 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m., all you got to do is make it to 1:30. You don't even have to spend the whole night there. The prison's fame as a paranormal hotspot has been significantly amplified by its features on major paranormal investigation television shows. It has been the subject of dedicated episodes on 2 of the genre's most popular series, Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters. The TAPS team for the Ghost Hunters also conducted a full investigation for an episode titled The Lost Souls of Joliet, joined by investigators for the show Destination Fear to explore the unsettling activity reported by volunteers at the site. These television programs are entertainment. They're not documenting the prison's existing paranormal lore. They're shaping it, curating it, and broadcasting it to a mass audience. By choosing to focus on a particular narrative, such as the Gacy connection, they elevate certain aspects of the haunting while potentially ignoring others. Millions of viewers are exposed to a specific televised version of the haunting, which then informs their own expectations. Future visitors and amateur ghost hunters arrive at the prison with preconceived notions derived from these shows, looking for the specific phenomenon they saw on TV. This reinforces and magnifies certain legends, altering the natural evolution of the site's folklore. Now, there are actually two places called the Old Joliet Haunted Prison. The first is the actual historical site on Collins Street, which is managed by the museum. The second is the Old Joliet Haunted Prison, a large-scale commercial haunted house attraction located at a separate address, 401 Woodruff Road, in the prison's former annex women's prison building. This attraction is produced and managed by the National 13th Floor Entertainment Group, and it's a themed entertainment experience, not a historical or paranormal tour. It features professional actors, elaborate sets, special effects, and interactive elements like escape rooms and zombie laser tag. It leverages the real prison's creepy atmosphere, but its narratives are entirely fictionalized for maximum entertainment value. The attraction's lore has a vengeful warden whose spirit now commands an army of the undead, a story that was created to be spooky, but isn't historically accurate. It's kind of incredible that Old Joliet Prison's legend is so potent that it's enough to sustain both a historical museum and a theme park style attraction simultaneously. The ghost stories of Old Joliet Prison are an essential living chapter of the institution's long and brutal history. They represent the collective memory of profound human suffering, of systemic injustice, and of explosive violence, all imprinted upon the very limestone of the walls. These stories are the enduring legacy of thousands of lives who were confined, broken, and extinguished within the prison. The prison may have closed officially in 2002, but it did not end the sentences of its spiritual inmates. The ongoing reports of paranormal activity suggest that the stories of those who lived and died within its walls are still being told. The limestone continues to hold its prisoners, and their voices continue to echo through the decaying halls, ensuring that their tragic legacy is never forgotten. The walls of the Joliet prison was built to confine men during their life, and now it serves to preserve their stories in death. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like and share this video. You can follow me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and TikTok. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, you can leave a comment and tell me about it. Or if you like the video, leave a comment and tell me about it. Or if you're feeling shy, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a link in the description to buy me a coffee, so you can buy me a coffee. Or you can become a member of this channel. For the $1.99 tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos, as well as access to my videos before they go public. I appreciate you considering this. I'm going to put the names of all of the people who have made donations to this channel here, and I'm going to put the names of all of the members of this channel here. Thank you all very much. You can also support me by continuing to watch my videos, clicking like, and hitting the hype button. And it really does mean a lot to me that you watch my videos. And please stay spooky.